Aloha everyone, this is Dr. BethAnne, and welcome to March's edition of Intuitive You. We are talking about metamorphosis this month and how the intuitive self relates to metamorphosis. And I chose that topic for several reasons. One, it's March, and I feel like that's a seasonal time where nature is going through a change in cycles and going through transformation. So it felt like a seasonal reflection. Two, on a personal note, this is the year anniversary of this intuition letter. And a year ago, I started this under the name Your Heart Magic. And as I've gone through my personal transformation, I changed the name of it to Intuitive You to better reflect what I'm teaching. So it felt like an appropriate reflection on that level. And then the third piece is that we are in a constant state of creation and transformation, whether or not we think about it. Every day we transform something, and every day we create something in our lives. And we can have an empowered say about what we want that to look like. So I feel like as sovereign souls who are here to be our highest expression of self, why not have a say and really think about who do we want to become in this world? I was doing an interview yesterday on a podcast, and the interviewer asked me this really great question: is there a difference between change and transformation? And I said, absolutely. I think change happens of its own accord. Things change all the time in our life. But transformation, to me, is a really personal concept. We can go through change and choose not to transform and to sort of like white knuckle grip onto our old self or our old life and say, I'm not letting you go. Or we can choose to go through change and say, I'm going to allow this to be a process that rearranges me. That's what metamorphosis is all about. It is going into something in one form and coming out on the other side as a more mature form, a bigger form, a changed form. That is what transformation is. And we can't help but transform in our lives because nature is transformative and life is transformative, but we can make that process a lot harder on ourselves by resisting it, or we can learn to work with the energy of change and allow it to be truly transformative and allow for a personal metamorphosis. So since I'm all about wellness, let's do that one. And there's 3 ways that I want to share that I really see metamorphosis and the intuitive self being connected today. And the first one is that metamorphosis is a non-linear process, and our intuition is a non-linear process. So when we have intuitive information come into our lives, it can come in multiple forms. Intuitive information might come in through a dream. We might feel something. We might have a somatic reaction. We might feel like moving in one direction or feeling drawn to something and we don't even know why. And sometimes as we go along, we start to collect these bits and pieces of intuitive information, and when we put them into a bigger picture, we often will have an epiphany and say, oh, I get it. That's what I've been trying to tell myself. This needs to change, or I'm ready to leave this behind, or I'm ready to start this. And metamorphosis is really similar. Unlike a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, which is a really amazing birth process, but it's also a linear process that you can mark in science class. What are the steps to that process? Going through metamorphosis in our life isn't linear like that. We don't have the step-by-step instruction book that says, first this is going to happen, and then you're going to feel this way, and then you're going to feel this way, and then you're going to feel this way, and then when you're done, you get your wings. Metamorphosis is completely different, and we might go through a bunch of chaos for a while. We might try on different aspects of self and say, I don't even know what I'm going through. We might have strange feelings or get in touch with an emotion that's really unfamiliar. We might feel a yearning to do something we've never tried before. And at the end of all of that, we might start putting it together, and we might finally see the bigger picture and understand what our metaphorical wings look like. And maybe we see, wow, I was just trying to grow, and these were all the ways that I was bringing growth into my life. So metamorphosis is a process that can be intuitively understood much more easily differently than understanding it in a linear way. And that brings me to the second thing that I want to share, and that is intuitive information is often how our deeper self, our soulful self, lets us know that we are going through change. I wrote a social media post a while back where I talked about it's okay to feel out of sorts because it means you're changing. And I gave examples in that post of times I've gone through change in my life and some of the ways that my intuitive body has let me know that I'm changing. I have had times where I kept having a sense that some part of me was like trapped in a cage and kept banging on a wall trying to get out. I was stuck in a relationship that wasn't serving me. That's what that was connected to. I have had times where I've literally felt like I was being stretched, and I even put on my running pants and it seemed like they were shorter, and I thought, what is going on here? I'm in my 30s at the time. I'm not growing taller. That was after losing my brother, and I just had this feeling of being stretched into a bigger person and being stretched up towards spirit in greater ways, and it literally left me feeling like I had growing pains and aches in my legs, and that I was just being stretched out, and that I was sort of reaching for these new heights. I have had times where I have felt I've had dreams that I was dissolving, or I couldn't stop crying, and I just had this sense of I'm dissolving, some part of me is dissolving. And that was always heralding a time where I was about to go through like a shamanic breaking of self and dissolve an old identity and really go through a phoenix death then rebirth process. So our intuitive self lets us know through perceptions, through images, through dreams, through things that we're drawn to, song lyrics, or we're drawn to read a certain something and we don't know why it resonates so much, but it's speaking to us. So those are all clues, and they're ways to put vocabulary to our metamorphosis process when we are going through change in our life. And I will say, after I wrote that social media post, I had so many people reach out and say, like, this really resonates with me, and start telling me about experiences where they didn't feel like themselves and they felt out of sorts, and they were having these sort of strange somatic things, or strange things happen in their psyche, strange emotional experiences. So that's all intuitive information, and it's all here to inform us, and we get to learn the non-linear vocabulary of that. And we do that by point 3, using our intuitive practice to support our metamorphosis. I highly encourage people to keep an intuition journal. Sometimes I call it a synchronicity journal. Sometimes I call it an intuition guide. Either way, find a Word document or an art book or a place that you start tracking just your own process of self, your non-linear process yourself. This doesn't have to be like, Dear Diary, today I felt, but it can be, here's what I'm noticing coming up right now. Here's what I'm being drawn to. I've heard this song on the radio 5 times this week. I keep finding hearts in the cloud. I keep seeing this. When we write it down, we begin to develop almost like our own map, our own language for how our intuition is speaking to us, and we can be more intentional about tuning in and listening to that. So when we are going through metamorphosis and we have one of those strange things happen where we say, I feel really out of sorts today, or I'm crying for no reason, we can just write that down in our journal, and we can, after a while, we start to see patterns where we start to see, gosh, every time I felt out of sorts, I was always about to have a bigger breakthrough. Or maybe we realize, gosh, I always feel sort of clouded around a new moon, and the clarity usually comes in over the next few weeks. That's how we develop that self-knowledge. That is how we learn to become experts of our own intuitive self. So whatever your practice is, that can be something that supports you, because you start to see the patterns of your intuitive self, how your deeper self speaks to you, how your psyche self speaks to you. And that helps you become a really wise expert in who you are, so you don't have to be afraid of the information coming in or think it's weird. You don't discount it. You can just know it's valid. You are telling yourself something. Your soul is telling yourself something, and your job is to pay attention and to be open and to allow yourself to go through the process. And that's really what metamorphosis is all about. It is a process. We don't know how we're going to look on the other side. So we can say, I want to come out of this transformed. I want to come out of this feeling more free. We can set our intentions around it, but at some point we have to surrender to the process and say, I let myself be changed, and I trust the deeper process of life. I trust the deeper process of my intuitive self. I trust the deeper process of heart. I trust the deeper process of spirit, and I trust all of it to support me in becoming exactly who I'm meant to be. Have a fantastic March. If you are just catching this on YouTube, feel free to pop over to my website, BethAnneKW.com, and sign up for the newsletter, where you have not only access to this video, but I also give intuitive activities, and I usually do some sort of a blog or something that does intuitive support and also support for heart-based living. All right, much aloha and light, and I will see everybody in April.